Walking is a full body movement to move the body forward to a desired location using a continuous pattern of strides. This movement pattern can vary between individuals for a variety of reasons. For example, height, pelvis girdle, and age, as muscles weaken over time. Whilst walking, it is the appendicular skeleton that is most involved during the walking cycle, with a range of different motions happening, such as with your arms moving in a pendulum angular motion, and the legs see flexion and extension with the tibiofemoral, coxal, and talocoral, as well as the adduction and abduction.
The toe phase of the walking gait begins as the toe leaves the ground. The gastrocnemius contracts, which begins to raise the foot up through dorsiflexion and therefore entering the swing phase of the walking gait and leaving the stance phase. The heel strike phase of the walking gait begins as the heel strikes ground. This has the tibiofemoral joint slightly in the flexion motion and the taloacral joint in the plantar flexion. This has the body's centre of gravity approximate around the pelvic area. The tibial's anterior muscle contracts to place the heel on the ground gently. Following joints are what we taped up for the test: glenohumeral, humeral ulnar, radiocarpal, coxal, tibiofemoral, and the taloacral. These are the main lower extremity muscles being used whilst walking: gluteus medius and the gluteus maximus. The gluteal group contract, moving your leg forward whilst you walk. The gluteus maximus, which is the largest muscle in the body, and the gluteus medius both aid the extension, rotation during the swing phase, and the abduction and the adduction of the coxal joint. The bicep femoris, the semimembranous, and the semitendinous. These muscles make up the hamstring group. All these muscles aid the extension of the coxal joint and the flexion and extension of the tibiofemoral joint during the walking cycle, so the leg can bend and straighten. On the front of the leg, we have the sartorius muscle, the vastus intermedius, the vastus lateralis, and the vastus medialis. These compose of the quadricep group, which aids the flexion of the coxal joint and the extension of the tibiofemoral joint during the walking cycle. The quadricep group and the hamstring group works together during the walking and running to aid the extension and flexion of the leg at the tibiofemoral and the coxal joint to prevent injury. With the tibulus anterior, the gastrocnemius, and the soleus. These muscles make up the plantar flexure group and the dorsiflexor group. Together, these muscles work to aid the dorsiflexion and the plantar flexion of the taloacral during the walking gait.
After labelling up our participant as shown earlier, we set up the camera using a 3-4-5 triangle. We measured a 3 metre line across the line our participant walks, then a 4 metre line towards where the camera could possibly be placed. Then in perpendicular there will be a 5 metre line to complete the triangle. We then set up the camera on the perpendicular angle to the plane of motion, using a plumb line to be certain this was correct. The camera was then put onto the shutter speed best suited to the experiment, which was 1/250 Hz, and placed onto the tripod at hip height.
To scale the video, we used a 1 meter ruler which was clearly marked with red tape on the top and the bottom, then pictured in the plane of performance in both horizontal and vertical showings.
Before the participant walked, we made sure there was a blank screen and no clutter in the plane of performance, so the participant is clear and has no obstacles in his way.
The biomechanical response to walking starts with the brain sending signals to the muscles, which then send signals to the tendons, and lastly, signals to the bones and joints.
During the walking condition, the participant's tibiofemoral ranged from 128 degrees to 170. In the graph, you can see the participant's tibiofemoral joint had nearly reached its highest point in the heel strike movement. In the swing phase, the tibiofemoral joint was at its lowest point of the walking gait. During the walking condition, the participant's talocotral ranged from minus 15.63 degrees to 33.78 degrees. Within the graph, the participant's talocotral is in the middle of the range, which is 4.78 degrees in the heel strike. However, in the swing phase, it was at its highest phase, which was 31.07. To collect the biomechanical data, we used Ka video. This allowed us to digitize the participant in both the walking and running conditions. We then clicked onto the marked points on the model to digitize the video. This then allowed us to analyze and record all the angles of the joints throughout the walking cycle. The results are as follows.
46 degrees within the toe-off stage of the run. The glenohumeral joint was at a fairly low degree of its range with an angle of 141.54 degrees.
To find out the velocity of our participant, we use the equation of velocity equals distance over time. The participant ran a distance of 400 meters in a time of 138 seconds, giving a velocity of 2.9 meters per second to the power of 1. To find out the acceleration of our participant, we use the equation of acceleration equals velocity over time, as shown earlier. The participant velocity was 2.9 meters per second to the power of 1, and the time was 138 seconds. So therefore, the acceleration over 400 meters is 0.02 meters per second to the power of 2.
To begin with, we attached the heart rate monitor to the participant and took his resting heart rate whilst he was sitting down, which was a mean reaching at 68.3 beats per minute. Then the participant got on the treadmill at 1 degree incline to keep the test as reliable as possible. The participant then walked 400 meters at 3.5 kilometers per hour, with the heart rate being recorded every 100 meters. After the participant completed the walking task, another heart rate was taken. This reading was 80 beats per minute, giving an increase of 11.7 beats per minute from the resting heart rate.
After the heart rate was taken, the participant got back onto the treadmill under the same conditions as walking. However, the speed was increased to 10.4 km per hour for the run. The heart rate was still taken every 100 meters. After the run, participants' heart rate had risen to 166 beats per minute. The results show a large heart rate increase during the run from 85 beats per minute at the start of the run to 166 beats per minute at the end, an increase of 81 beats per minute. This increase is due to the heart needing to pump more red blood cells carrying hemoglobin and therefore oxygen to the working muscles, to replace the carbon dioxide building up as the exercise difficulty increases.
To measure the peak flow, the participant used a peak flow meter and blew into it 3 times before any activity took place. This allowed for a more accurate mean score. The participant then repeated this method of 3 blows twice more, once after the walking condition and once after the running condition. These results, as shown on the screen, gave a range of 118.33 between the mean score of the resting condition of 386.67 to the mean score of 505 from the running condition.
Limitations to our experiment was that we used 2D cameras. This only allows us to film and analyse movements of the participant in one plane of motion, which is frontal. This inhibits how much data we could collect. Another limitation was loose clothing. To ensure markers are on the correct joints we are needing to digitise, we ideally need them on skin or tight clothing for accurate results. This will stop the markers moving out of position during walking or running, the loose clothing allowing for more accurate data to be collected. The final limitation was the frame rate, with the experiments only using 2D cameras, and when it comes to digitising the film frames were blurred and not in focus, making it difficult to follow the marker and accurately digitise the participant.
One possible improvement could be the use of EMG, also known as electromyography. This will take in the possibility to monitor muscle involvement throughout a certain condition, such as the run. The EMG would allow the experimenters to look at how different muscles contract and relax as a participant runs. The experimenters would even be able to look at certain muscles such as the gastrocnemius and the bicep femoris.
Another improvement could be the use of a high-speed camera with a larger frame rate, so when digitising takes place, the image will not be blurred and difficult to follow the joints in question. However, extra lighting will be needed as the image will be darker.
Finally, another possible improvement would be the use of the Vicon 3D camera system. This allows for an infrared marker tracking system for the most accurate of results. It allows for all angles of the planes of motion to be taken very accurately. This will allow for much more reliable results than the 2D camera system. However, although it offers much more reliable readings, it is much more time consuming than the 2D camera system that we used.